This is the Criterion Creeps podcast, and tonight we're talking about by Brakhage, an anthology, the films, the short films of Stan Brakhage. RJ,
Yes?
were you familiar with Stan Brakhage before this week?
Um,
In any
I,
way, shape, or form?
I wasn't, and I gotta say it was a better time when I was not familiar with Mr. Stan
In
Brakhage.
the before time?
In the before, there will only ever be two parts of my life: before Brakhage and by Brakhage, which I am now in the by Brakhage era.
Yeah.
No, I was not aware of this Hodor looking dude, but I did some research this week because everyone's always like, "You don't know what you're talking about, RJ." So I was like, I'll look into this Stan Brakhage dude.
Okay.
So I'm vaguely aware now.
So what is the letterbox synopsis of Stan Brakhage have to say? First of all, Stan Brakhage is or was,
Yeah.
'cause he's dead.
Yeah, he's dead.
Stan Brakhage was one of the most influential filmmakers in American avant-garde cinema, noted for his unflinching social commentaries and technical innovations.
Right.
Over his nearly 40-year career, he has made over 200 films of varying length. I think actually on Letterboxd, his film count is something like 354.
Jeez.
He made his first film, Interim, 1952, at age 18 after dropping out of college. Brackish films seek to change the way we see. They encourage viewers to eschew traditional narrative structure in favor of pure visual perception that is not reliant on naming what is seen. Rather, his goal is to create a more visceral visual experience, for he believes that a, quote, stream of visual consciousness could be nothing less than the pathway of the soul. End quote. To this end, his films are shot in highly sensual colors and utilize minimal soundtracks.
Okay.
So, RJ, first of all, who are fans of the Brack Attack?
I'm unaware. I would love to hear who's fans of Stan Brakhage.
Why?
Is it art house?
Trey Parker and Matt Stone,
No, they're not.
who he apparently was a film teacher of theirs because they were there in Colorado,
Yeah.
and they actually cast him in Cannibal the Musical.
Okay, but I think that's like, is that about his film base, or is it just because he was like their favorite teacher?
I'm sure that he was probably a good teacher. He's a
Well, yeah, and that's what I mean. It's like
Yeah,
they were
could have
fans
been.
because of the man, not of the work, right?
Yeah. Wow.
Who knows?
They wound up making a different kind of work altogether.
Yes.
So for context too, because I remember when this came out on DVD, 16 years ago, because it was like, I was like kind of following along with this Criterion Collection stuff and being like, oh, what's the next exciting release? They were doing the same thing they do now, like three or four things every month, and it's like, oh, what's this? By Brakhage. That's interesting. What's this cover with all these little stills? And what is it? This guy's made hundreds and hundreds of short films. It's like, oh, that's kind of neat. And and this is and at the time when this came out, it was a big deal because Brakhage didn't want his work on video because an important part for him was the presentation of this. So, I mean, there wasn't like Brakhage tapes floating around in libraries. It was like, oh, if you wanted a copy, you had to get films because these should be projected.
Okay.
And I honestly could not find how this work. Like, I mean, I didn't dig deep. I didn't do a big research project on this, but I was curious how this stuff was exhibited in the first place. Because he was making this stuff in through the 50s, early 60s, and people were like fucking jeering and like making fun of this stuff. What a shocker, RJ. But then he eventually, it seems like he found an audience, because I think there was definitely a crossover with the type of images that he was using and the way he was showing it, and the rise of drug culture. I think there was like a real nexus point, and like you watch movies that like show what being high on acid looks like. Like just like a few weeks ago, I watched The Trip with R.I.P. Peter Fonda. And there's all these little things you're like, oh yeah, like this depiction of what it is to be high and color and stuff like that, it kind of looks like experimental films that were being made, and a lot of those kind of experiments that guys like Brakhage was doing in the 50s, or going back a couple decades, there's this other fella, a New Zealand experimental filmmaker, Len Lai, who was also kind of doing these sort of fields of color experiments and stuff like that. These non-narrative things, but using sound and music kind of more. Up here in Canada, we had Norm McLaren making his films, but it was like under the under the National Film Board. So there was actually kind of a institution backing this sort of experimentation. Whereas in the U.S., Stan Brakhage was just doing this shit on his own. He was self-funding this work and just making projects. There's no grant bodies for this type of filmmaking. You're just in America. You're kind of on your own, and you have to find an audience to do it. And I mean, he was probably for a good chunk of his life kind of living until he started teaching in a university, like hand to mouth and like doing here and there work, trying to make these films made. And I was listening on the DVD. They don't have commentary tracks, but they have remarks where it's these kind of like little canned excerpts from interviews that he did kind of in the 90s and early 2000s when this DVD came out, just talking about what like the process of how long it took to make some of these films, particularly the ones where he's using the colors on the film stills, where he it took him like 6 years to make a 4-minute short film because of the way he was working, because he made 354 of these different films in varying styles and experiments, allegedly. And so there's like a whole process to this. So I would say, and this has come reflecting on my own background,
journey?
my own degree, I guess, where like I wound up getting an art history degree from my university, but I was doing film, and a lot of the courses at my conceptual art school were on the experimental film side, and I was in a course called Video Sketchbook, where the whole idea was that you would make a short film every week that was 90 seconds long, and you had certain guidelines, and you were supposed to just like, you're not looking for narratives, you can't use like music, you can't use popular music to mask your mistakes or like make things more listenable and music video-ish. It's supposed to be just like you make your own sound effects, you use like direct sound, and you kind of like steered away from that element of it just to get to ideas about process. So it kind of fits into this Brackish thing. So I would say that me going into this, I have a bit of a familiarity with this type of work. Like there's like a guy, one guy that came to mind while watching this, I was reminded of was Bill Morrison, who did this film called Decasia, which is like him taking old footage that is completely deteriorating from like the turn of the century and in that era, and he was just making these feature films, or this one feature film of just assembled footage of just random film scraps, and like over time you just watch this footage deteriorate as it was filmed up and recorded, and like the stuff is just like breaking apart. So this is sort of the world that this inherits. As far as like an inclusion in the Criterion Collection, it's very unusual. There's not a lot of non-narrative film projects like this. There is the Chris Marker film that comes along later that's like sort of similar to this, Sans Soleil, but it is still kind of like a documentary project, but it's like editing is like not a traditional narrative whatsoever. But it kind of like has a referent to the real world, so you can kind of like relate to what you're watching. Stan Brakhage is a abstract filmmaker. Eventually, like he really full on goes into like color blobs, like where you're just watching light. And then even when he's filming the world as we see it, it is heavily edited and stylized and like so like discombobulated, and it's nothing like, it's not even Pepe Le Moco, RJ. It is not like whatever you want to call it, like your least pleasant experience of in the Criterion Collection. It's not. You can't even compare the two things because they're working in completely different ways. And I don't know if this DVD package does a very good job of introducing this work at all. Like there's no real like. There was a documentary from 1988 called Brakhage that kind of was one of the only ways you could watch Stan Brakhage films for a long time. And I've actually seen a lot of people have a criticism of that documentary for having way too much footage. Like they just have like full on, 4-minute clips showing his work without any like break of it. And people are like, this gets kind of old. I'm like, well, here's 25 Stan Brackish short films for you. And you figure it out. So I don't know if this package necessarily introduces this work very well. There's no explanation. There's no way of housing it. It's kind of like, hey, here are the films available for the very first time for you to watch. And you're kind of just left to your own devices, which, I mean, is probably, like, other than those remarks where he says things, but it doesn't give you, like, the context of this abstract, non-narrative experimental filmmaker. There's no there's no context of like, what is experimental film? What is the point of this? Why would anyone do anything like this? Why am I watching this? And I mean, this kind of fits into the thing of like going spine by spine in our creep through the collection. You hit something like this and there's no context. There's like, it's just kind of this would belong like in a, if you took that number away, this would be a film that it belongs in film libraries. It should be kept and restored like anything else. It should be available to you. So how do you begin to talk about this in terms of like, usually a lot of times we're talking about these movies that are narrative, entertainment value, historical importance. This is like such a side step from what the collection up to this point has been. I'm sure. I agree. I think you can totally agree with that. So yeah, I mean, this is for people who are going to be interested in what Stan Brakhage was doing. And this is like a small sliver of it, ultimately. They produced the two big works, Dog Star Man and The Act of Seeing with One's Own Eyes. Yeah. Those are like kind of the big ones that people, if you read books on a big experimental film, those are the two that people go to. They're the standbys, because when it comes down to breaking down the other Brakhage works, ultimately you're basically talking about iterations on this exact same process over and over and over again. So, I mean, the idea of sitting down like we did this week and watching 25 Brakhage films like all at once, it's kind of like wandering into a Stan Brakhage retrospective at an art gallery. Sitting down, perhaps in front of a laptop, in front of your TV, to sit down and watch this all at once. It's like, is this how it's meant to be watched? Because in film, like even in an art gallery, I mean, when it comes to like seeing film projects like this or videos, I usually don't stick around, and most people don't. They go into a room, they look at the screen, they go, is anything interesting happening right now? And if it's just a bunch of blob and colors, they go, oh, cool. And then they walk on, let alone sit around and watch anywhere from 32-second clips. Actually, I think the shortest one here is 12 seconds to, a Dog Star Man, which is 70 odd minutes or something like that. Yeah. Nobody, I don't think, really is watching Dog Star Man from start to finish. And the people who do, I don't know what to tell you.
I did.
We both did. And I know I was not paying attention for great chunks of it. Other than, oh, hey, here's some new gimmick. Oh, it's a lactating nipple.
Oh, great. That's, I guess, a first for the collection so far?
I 100% think that is the case.
I mean, until we get to some 90s comedies where there's people lactating all the time. Well, as you mentioned, Trey Parker and Matt Stone in Basketball, there is I think it's Trey Parker, or no, it's Matt Stone, I believe, is lactating his nipples quite a bit in that movie.
Yeah. So, I'll just also mention that, like, I think the closest thing at this point that resembles the by Brakhage anthology is the Beastie Boys anthology, because it's like similar kind of idea where it's just like a collection of shorts. But I mean, Ultimate Beastie Boys music videos are commercial advertisements for buying albums, and but it's also a representation of like, hey, music videos don't just have to be packaging for advertising music; they can also kind of be their own art form. And so at the end of the day, there are still, for the ends of the day, it's like where there's narratives within them. They are like at least the most successful ones, like how all of Hollywood cinema and like box office and how we watch all video form is completely dominated by the power and triumph of the power of narrative. People gravitate toward it. That is what people want. That is why experimental film is so diminished, and it's like people just laugh at it because nobody wants, like, it's because the only successful experimental film are the pieces that can then be co-opted by narrative. When I was clicking around a little bit looking at Brakhage, one thing that I was reminded of was the final moments of Last Temptation of Christ, which when Christ dies, when our boy Willem Dafoe, he says it is accomplished. The camera goes all splotchy out, and then we get to like weird flickering color splotches on film still, and that is Scorsese completely making reference to Brakhage about this idea of this transcendence of life and death. And Martin Scorsese does have Brakhage film stills in his office. So there's these weird little things where it's like, yeah, in that you don't even think about it, but like that was kind of a reference point to that. But it's like that's where experimental film is, like its touchstone is like, how does it get deployed successfully in narrative films? Like, like the weight of it is just shifted to that. So I have no expectations whatsoever of anybody watching this. I don't think people are accidentally stumbling into like, oh, what's this buy Brakhage here thing all about? Because now we have YouTube and Vimeo where these things are just readily available and people can just cherry pick and watch a few things and go, I get this or don't, and I move on with my life. Fun fact, RJ, there's a volume 2 by Brakhage.
No.
That will come down the pike one day where you get to watch.
Is that in the collection?
Oh, yeah, of course, RJ.
You're fucking kidding me. Come on.
So there's like 30 more shorts where this came from. And I'll hand it off to you before we can discuss. I have a dozen pages of notes,
Jesus.
RJ, because I went through
dozens?
A dozen pages of notes for these films. I gave them their due, but I'm curious, RJ, with my preamble there. What was your thoughts by Brakhage?
By Brakhage. Well, as I said,
by Jove.
There's by Joe. There's before Brakhage, and there's by Brakhage. I gotta start and just commend you and applaud your effort at analyzing.
This is just me talking.
I understand. I understand. Yeah. And you did a very good job at setting the frame here, setting the context. You say, hey, look, I got an art degree. Let me flex on this a little bit here. You're like, I know this Brakhage guy. I got a little bit of experience. So I think you did. I'm being genuine here. I think you did a good job in trying to rationalize, 1, what this is, 2, why it's included in the Criterion Collection, and 3, why it matters at all. So I think you did a good job. That said,
thanks.
My wife, she also has an art degree, and I attended many art exhibits and openings with her in previous years. And she is at a point now where I showed her just a little bit of this Brakhage. I was like, hey, do you want to watch 4 hours of art house short film this week? And I showed her a little bit, and she's like, I'm over art. She is still a member of the art community. She works in an art gallery.
Yep.
But I feel like that is a disdain that it could come easily with this format. Like you said, who wants this stuff? Probably not many people. But I mean, there were a lot of shows I went to with her where it's exactly what you said. You'd walk into a room, there'd be something playing on a projector, and it could be like one of these 1-minute things, but it would just be on a loop, right? And it would just be looping forever.
Yep.
And you'd watch it for 10 seconds and you'd be like, okay, got it.
Yep.
And that's what I think 85% of these were for me,
yep.
Where I watched them and I was like,
don't question that at all.
Got it. And then, I went on with my life.
Yeah.
So there was those. So I get it. I think these also too, like, I think you make a good point where you're like, the influence of them is almost greater than what they are themselves, where you're talking about Scorsese. And I saw one pretty like brash or like comparison where someone's like, well, Twin Peaks: The Return episode 8 is completely influenced by Brakhage.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa.
Well, that one sequence is.
Whoa. I was like, maybe so.
However, when they go into the nuclear blast.
Yep.
No.
And I was like, however, our boy Davey Lynch, I think he waxes it a little bit better into the layers of what he's doing. And I think that's what you were trying to say. It's like how this stuff gets used in other things is better than what it actually is almost. That's how I think. You didn't say that.
No. But that's what I mean. It's like, yeah, that's kind of how, that's the weird thing with art is like what it's,
what it influences,
what its purpose is or what it does. And like, that like David Lynch and Scorsese, that's a generational thing. Like they were young students in the 60s when this stuff was being like, this was new. Like abstract art, like, you walk in and see like a Rothko painting or something like that on the wall, and like that was still like a real new thing that people like had, like, and they still like, people still hate abstract art. Like people never got over that. It's like there's like a revulsion to it, I think, because it doesn't play by the rules of what people want and recognize and are kind of just untrained. Like there comes an education thing that you have to seek out, and people don't get that at all, of like what the narrative of art is and how it's come about. And some people are like, well, I shouldn't need that education to be able to like what I like. And I'm like, well, why? Like, it's weird. It's an argument because I go back and forth. Yeah. I mean, I work in art education, and I see it both ways. Like I have frustration. In my job during the school year, I get to meet artists from like who are 20 years old to 85 years old, and Stan Brakhage belongs to that group of guys who are now in their like 70s and 80s, and they work this, like the way that Brakhage talks about his stuff is so in line. They're just these like they make these literary references, they entitle their work in these ways where you're like, what? Like the Dark Tower, it's like, that sounds like it'd be really cool, and then you're like, oh, it's like the same thing that you've been doing for 30, 50 films, because they work in series and they work through ideas, and they have these like, there's like the one later on, I think it's like commingling.
Oh yes,
commingled containers, where his remarks are like he says like the camera was broken, and before he brought it into the shop, he shot some footage with it to test it out, and then he made a short film out of that footage. And then he also says, I was going in for cancer treatment and having my kidney removed, and I wish I had died because this would have been the perfect final film for me in '97. And it's like these anecdotes of like of guys who were like very genial, nice guys, but when they talk about their stuff, there's like an absurdity that like people make fun of for a good reason, because it's absurd. Like if you don't know how these guys talk and have arrived at these things, it's absurd. It's like comical. It seems like a parody of itself. It's like it's utter wank. It's whatever. But there is a genuineness to what these guys are doing. And man, it's tough sometimes, especially when you're sitting there for like an hour 3 of these things, and you're like, what am I doing? What is this? What is the merit of it? And you're like, yeah, it doesn't work like that. Because nothing in our life prepares us for this stuff unless you like set out to do it. And I mean, it's like an academic paper at times. Like it's like, oh, I'm gonna go read someone's master's thesis for fun. Nobody does that. People write a master's thesis. It gets read about 6 by 6 people on average, and then is never read again. I
read a master's thesis yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was for my own personal reasons.
There you go. See,
I'm one of the 6.
You're a weirdo. You're the anomaly. And then you know what? Because somebody probably signed up for some weird newsletter, they get a notification that somebody has read that paper, and for a fee, you can find out who read it. I mean, yeah, they could probably find me, but because we have to monetize these things. Apparently,
I wouldn't do them any good, but. You know what it's like.
Yeah.
I think you make a good point about that stuff, where it's kind of like, it's tough in the context sense to just to consume it the way that we did. I watched 85% of this in one sitting.
That's that's I intentionally broke my viewing up over the course of I think 4 days.
I think I watched 3 of them on the first day, and then 22 of them on the second day, something like that, something crazy. So the context to it is like a little wacky, but I think like one of the things I was going to say too is what you were talking about. They with kind of how these short films are like made, and just because I brought up David Lynch, I was thinking about his short films, and I was like, well, I think if people just turned on like, what is it, 6 men getting sick?
Yep.
Or whatever. I think there's more to it.
6 heads getting sick, I think is what it's literally called. Yeah.
Yeah. So you flip that on for like casual watching, people would be like, what the fuck is this? But like, I don't think people watch that unless you're like, the only reason I watched it was because of David Lynch.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and then I think I had like some sort of like forgiveness to it, where it's just like, well, it's just short films. What are you gonna do? He's a weird dude. So there's like that aspect to it. But yeah, like I've seen these things in art exhibits. I've seen these in bars. We used to have some hipster bars here. Like there was one called Tongue and Groove. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh, I sure do.
So that's where you'd go for your beef carpaccio and things of that.
Well, see, that's that was the fancy one. That was the nice one. I remember the original location, which is now Taj. That place was just about the seedy side of things.
Yes,
but a good time.
Yeah,
everyone had a good time.
That's the kind of place that they would have Brackish just playing on in the background with music.
No, they didn't.
When I was rolling.
No.
When I was rolling,
they didn't.
It seemed like it.
There was no projection.
Well,
you're lying.
I'm sure there's a bar somewhere in the world that did.
You setting up these straw men locations, these hipster bars. I saw you in Oliver. You were talking about this. I saw this, and I was like, you guys, you chuckleheads.
Well, honestly, my memory of Tongue and Groove was that they did things like that. Okay, I watched a couple movies at Tongue and Groove. I watched Ace on D, the hit movie from Denis Villeneuve, and Marwin Call, and those were actual showings. But so in my mind, it's like I bet they would have showed Brakhage.
Yeah.
But the point I brought it up for, and I mentioned to you a little bit ago, I was like 2 weeks ago, I was looking at my Brakhage stuff here, getting ready because it's 25 films, and like a lot of these are on YouTube, and I was just like looking to see what they were like, and I had music playing on in the background, and I said to you, I was like, holy shit, I was like, this thing syncs up like unbelievably. So I was listening to Alexis on Fire, and it was one of the Brakhage things. It was like 2 or 3 of the short films, and it just like paired up completely. And I was just like, what is going on?
So one of the rules in my video sketchbook course was that you could not use music in your videos, because I think of this very thing where like it just smooths it out. It's just kind of like, it becomes a backdrop to the music. And I see like there's a billion YouTube videos that do the exact same thing, where people make, I made a music video using my favorite song by David Bowie or by blah blah blah, and it's just like, but it also illustrates sometimes, it's like, if you take away that sound, you're left with this video, and it's like, oh yeah, look how crunky it is. And music solves a lot of problems, and it's a real cinema thing. So it's like sometimes an amazing thing when you watch a movie that does not use sound, and you're like, wow, there's like no score, there's no manipulation. It's just like letting things speak for itself, and it's just like it lets the film craft breathe, RJ, and speak.
Fine artisan film craft.
Yeah, where you just use minimal audio. Because there's times throughout this weekend you were messaging me saying, are these videos supposed to have no sound? Because there is no soundtrack. Like you're watching
There's no audio.
It is no audio. There's no like buzz of like a projector. It is just the image. It is stripped down to the bone, which also makes 4 minutes seem like it lasts that much longer, because you are just, it is just your eyes looking at the image and taking in whatever those images are into your brain, and leaving it time to really think about what you're watching. In theory, good or bad, good or bad.
And and that's why I bring that up, where it's like, so for me, I did it just completely unintentionally, where it was the music I had on in the background just paired up with it well, and I was like, whoa. And a friend of the show, Oliver, had a similar experience where he's like, this reminds me of like 90s music, and I was like, I feel you, man. And I think it's kind of like, so I am that guy, I'm that guy who's just like, context shouldn't matter for, I would say, 9 out of 10 Criterion movies, where it's like, if I need to do the homework for it just to enjoy it, I don't know if that makes it a good movie. However, and I know you said that, for these ones, it's like what you said, where Brakhage himself didn't want these ported to like home video, basically.
Yeah.
Because I kind of get it. These are the things that should just be playing, like projected onto walls and like galleries or bars. I would play this shit in a bar, sure.
Behind your band?
Yeah, I would play it behind my band or something. And it's like, I feel like it would work there, but in home viewing, for me, Jarrett,
it doesn't make
home viewing. It's just like
absurd.
You're just like, what am I doing?
No one's. I don't think anyone's popping on. Desist Film from 1954. And it's like, yeah, I think I'm gonna watch that. Like, no one.
Yeah.
There's like, because there's short films that you watch for entertainment, and now you just watch that on YouTube when you want to watch, like, essentially, Beastie Boys Sabotage, a music video. If you want to watch that, just go check it out. You put it on, and then you go, yeah, I'm good. You don't need to go bust out the DVD anymore. It seems no purpose. And like Brakhage is like, I don't think it's gonna be like his like best ones. The one that for me I thought like was the most successful of his like abstract shorts was Night Music, which is 32 seconds long. It's, what is it here? Part of 3 hand-painted films. So this is like when he's, I guess, first doing the hand-painted stuff. He painted this on IMAX film.
Okay.
And it's to attempts to capture the beauty of sadness as the eyes have it when closed in meditation on sorrow. Whatever. This one like visually is absolutely stunning. I watched it twice. I know. I spent an entire minute on that one particular. It just like was really like the color like levels were just like, wow, like it looks incredible. Like it really looked like nebulas, and like it just looked great. Whereas a lot of them look so samey because the way that the persistence of image kind of flickers by, you barely ever get to see an image for very long. And then he started changing it up a little bit where he would slow down and speed up. I think with the one that's like To Marilyn, there's times where it kind of speeds up, speeds down. And
For
Marilyn, that's it. And you get to see like those like still images. Like if you saw that as a painting on a wall by itself, you kind of go, oh, nice. And then like
nice.
Then you just kind of go on, I guess, because there's no like, for some people they respond really strongly to that stuff.
Right.
And in film mode, when you're watching things at 24 frames per second, because this was projected film, you could set it at any speed, and it kind of goes up and down. It's just about the barrage of the image, and the idea is like whatever you're supposed to get out of it is what you get out of it. And if you're open to that experience, it can do something for you. And if you're not, oh my God, you're just going to hate this shit. And I don't blame you necessarily, but it like watching this, it reminded me a lot of my problems with just like the lack of like respect, I guess, for art in general. Like anywhere you go.
Well, Jarrett, art isn't real. I don't know if you knew that.
I saw some hashtags about it, but it's like I don't know if I can't really necessarily blame people, because like the whole kit and caboodle, the whole system is kind of like, that's like the least important thing. Do you know math? Do you know your maths? But
yes.
So there's like there's obviously there's things that are prioritized over art education, and that's like been the case forever, because it'll cost the same amount of money to learn that stuff, but is that going to get you a job? I hear it all the time. Every time I mention people, like they go, oh, you work at the university? They think, oh, you must be like an astrophysicist. What do you do there? And I say, I work in the art department. And then they go, oh. Every time. So
I understand completely, because as I mentioned before, my partner works in the art department, or in the art gallery rather.
Yes.
And it's the same thing. Like when she was finishing, like we finished our undergrads a year apart, and I started my master's in neuroscience, and our joke was always, it was like that she would never find a job and that I would be okay. And then what happened was she had a job before she even graduated, and I
Me too.
still can't find a job in neuroscience years later. So it's just like, what? I'm just saying, I agree with you, Jarrett, because it's like, priorities of the man, hey? But some of those things get decided by higher up people. It's
I've literally had people tell me who are people who work at McDonald's.
Yeah.
That like, oh, what's art good for? You can't get a job in that. And I go, oh yeah, like it's just kind of like, oh, people just say that because that's what they're told to say. And I don't know, maybe like other parts of the world, it's not so obnoxious, but I don't know. It depends where you live and the people around you, all these things. But I mean, this isn't like, if you don't care about Brakhage, I'm not going to hold it against you. I think it's because a lot of this doesn't work for me either. I've seen my fair share of this type of stuff, and I mean, let's
get into it.
Let's talk about it.
So Brakhage, Jarrett, is something that I found maybe one of the most grueling things we've done on the podcast. For me personally. And it's because you told me not to. You said, do not watch this all in one sitting. And I said, fuck you, Jarrett. I'm going to watch it all in one sitting.
I hate you,
I'm
Dad.
just going to go for it. I hate you, Dad. You're not my dad, but I hate you. And I'm just going to go for it. And it was grueling, to say the least.
Let's kick it off. So first up, I'm going in the order of my DVD set. And the very first film on that is Desist Film, the earliest film, I think, in the anthology here. From 1954, the synopsis from Letterboxd. 4 young men and a young woman sit in boredom. She smokes while one strums a lute, one looks at a magazine, and 2 fiddle with string. The door opens and in comes a young man, cigarette between his lips, a swagger on his face. The young woman laughs.
This is fucking synopsis?
As the 4 young men continue disconnected activities, the other 2 become a couple. When the 4 realize something has changed, first they stare at the couple who have kissed and are now are dancing slowly. The 4 run from the house in a kind of frenzy and return to stare. The power of sex has unnerved them. So my very first note for this and all my Brakhage films is in all caps, this is cinema. So this is about beatnik beats. It reminds me of juvenile delinquent exploitation films, just more immediate than calculated filmmaking. My first note here, it becomes sort of like an image that he recalls later on as belly buttons and belly button digging. How do you feel about that? I know you have peculiar interests. Keep it behind closed doors, because when I saw this, I was just waiting for that finger sniff.
Have you ever smelled your finger out of a belly button?
That's none of your business. That's between me and my belly button and my finger and my nose.
Between you and your God?
Yeah.
Can you tell me about it?
It stinks.
Yes.
Yeah, it smells horrible.
Doesn't smell good.
So this is about assholes getting together to make cinema. This is like exactly when people in their studio decide, hey, let's do film. Like, and nowadays it's like, especially when you actually have film cameras to do it, this is basically what people make, because they think of themselves as very interesting subjects, because they're young and they're the most interesting people to themselves that they know, and they make things like this. And that tradition carries on to now. Kerouac, more like Kerouac. I just wrote that because on the road here,
What does that have to do with any of this?
The beatniks. It was a moment, RJ. Have you ever read that On the Road?
I haven't, but I'm aware of Jack Kerouac. I watched a movie once where someone played a Jack Kerouac.
Wow, huge.
I know that those. What are they? The Beat 5, the Beat 3, the Beat era, whatever the fuck they're
the
called.
Beat Poet. Yeah.
Howling and all that shit.
I know those dudes.
So
this comes from the era where a large portion of American males looked like Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen. Hey RJ, how do you feel about discordant audio? because this has this like I don't even know if you remember a lot of these things. That's why I wrote notes. But it's just this like
I wrote notes.
Like that is the audio track.
Why do you think I texted you so many times? Does this have audio?
Well, this one did have audio. And then we get leering, lustful rape faces. The end?
The end? Does this Desist Film?
Desist Film. I went into this seeing that our fellow Creeps listeners had watched it ahead of us and were just appalled by it. I kind of was like, yeah, so I've been here. I've seen this type of thing before. This is par for the course.
Yeah, I agree. I think I watched these in the same order you did. So I took an approach similar to the Beastie Boys, where I wrote down every one of the shorts, and then most of them I just have a one word, like a one word, one sentence review of each one. Okay, so Desist Film. I would have never guessed at the end of it that would be the most like coherent story of the entire collection of these by Brakhage. Yep. And I use coherent loosely, but it's like it's the only one that has anything really. And my only review is, oh look, gross people doing gross shit.
Oh man, that all those people.
But it's the most like it's like pretentious like art house people. It's like we're gonna stack it's a house of cards, man. We're smoking cigarettes, man. Look at us hang out, man.
This was like it's every decade's got these people. They're the clothes change, but the ideas, the youthful rebellion against something is there. It's all the tropes are there. I listened to the remarks on this. You got Brackish saying here, you have a director, a cameraman, actors, a set, a composer, and that's it. And it's like, yup. He talks about how he was inspired by the Italian neorealism, the Rossellini's, the De Sicas, and he talks about his interest in Fellini and Italian neorealism and French surrealism. And how artists couldn't work with film because it was expensive. So this is like one of the things, like this is what your shit looked like when all your money went to buying film. You did what you could. And I've seen better things made with film with no money. Those things do exist. And this RJ took 6 to 8 months to make.
I would have guessed it took 10 minutes to make.
Well, I don't know. The other thing, so this is maybe I'm getting into that wanky territory, but one way to think about this film and other of his films, and the way he talks about it too, is like think of his terms in terms of poetics, of poems, of poetry, which again I think I'm on record saying like I have very little time for poetry. I think for how everyone probably a lot of people think of Brakhage for some. I think about poetry. I have no time for like the vast majority of it. To me, I'm just like, just write it. Write a story. Why are you writing this poetry? Why are you making it this much more difficult to understand? But I feel like if I was going to get poetry, it would be via film because it's a medium I'm more interested in than the written word of poetry, which
it's the lowest art form.
Poetry.
Yeah. Did you not say that? I just thought we agreed that poetry was the lowest art form.
And finally, RJ, my note here is
yes,
this is the first appearance of sex.
The first, but not the last.
That's right. Next up, Wedlock House and Intercourse, 1959. RJ shaking his head. Synopsis: we see a film negative of a nude couple embracing in bed. Then, back in regular black and white images, we see them alone and together, clothed, at home. It's night. She sees his reflection in the window. She closes the drapes. After sex, again in a black and white negative, they sit, smoke, have coffee. They kiss. She smiles. They light candles. The images are often quick. The camera angles occasionally are off-kilter. Occasionally, RJ.
Occasionally.
The room is sometimes dark and sometimes lit, as if lit by the rotating of a searchlight. The images again appear in negative
wrote this shit?
When they return to bed. Yeah, these are help. Somebody wrote these. These are more accurate than some of the shit that we get for actual narrative films.
I understand, but it's like it's very like
These are like, you know what? Like when you actually read a textbook on like experimental film, these descriptions are very helpful because sometimes it's like it is stripped down meat and potatoes, written word what these things are if you had to describe them. But it's like,
I guess,
but it doesn't capture necessarily the tone because then it's like then it gets into subjectivity. So the synopsis of this from the Criterion DVD from SB. The first months of marriage with moments of mutual awareness, frightening understandings, lovemaking. So this RJ opens up with inverted balls and vagina.
Oh, you don't say.
And I wrote, it's Brakhage.
That's the Brakhage approach.
So this one's got no audio. And you know what? I'm gonna be a little out there. I actually found this effective, RJ. I found this effective.
Effective in what sense do you mean?
So there's this like the darkness, this all-encompassing black. We have these weird lone figures hanging out in dark kitchens and these explosions of like sex in an inverted world. It kind of like it captures this idea that like the act of sex kind of shifts us out of the dreary world that we inhabit, one of coffee and cigarettes, and out of the darkness. It's like it's inverted and it goes to brightness. Okay. And then my other note here is how uncommercial this film is. There's these striking images, but there's these weird juxtapositions that emerge from this listless pacing because this thing is just like a murky morass. Like there'll be like, here's a shot of like the corner of a room. Here's a corner of a door. Here's a hallway. And here's these shots. And then there's these people. But again, this is like when he's still referring to reality. Like there's still human beings in his frames and it's not just like pure abstraction of just light and color. There's those bright lights, those searchlights that I were mentioned, those bright lights running along the wall, the blacks of the curtains swirling around, aimless rhythms. These are all just tropes that were being explored, just like these bands of blackness kind of moving around. Like it's, again, experimental film. Not really interested in making something that's digestible as like, yeah, this is really well paced. But yeah, to me, this is just like, it captures this idea of like just two people in a dark world, but punctuated with these moments of light. It's just like, I don't know, it has this Eraserhead kind of quality. It does, because it's like these people who like don't really even love each other. There's no baby monster, unfortunately, and it doesn't have quite the panache of a David Lynch. But you know, what is my final note here? And yet, while some credence is given to the escape of sex, the sex is repetitive. It's so like depressing and sad because it's literally the same frame of dude getting on top of his woman with dangling balls, and then just start
with
like
what?
Dangling balls, and they just start kind of like rotating back and forth, and it's just this like listless thing. And then, before I hand it off to you, the remarks on this one from Brackage, he starts talking about the internet. Like I was using some digital. Some experiments with some like software and being like, yeah, it's really interesting, but I got bored with it after 10 minutes because it lacks a visceral quality.
And this was the one you liked?
I don't mind. I thought I had an actual thoughtful response while watching this.
This was Wedlock, right?
Yes. This is the one about just sex.
My one-line review was
yes.
50% balls,
yeah,
50% black screen.
Yep. Absolutely.
That's all. That's it.
Yep.
That's it. That's all I have to say about Wedlock.
Okay.
Balls. I saw a lot of balls this week,
well,
Jarrett.
I mean, were you expecting it?
I was not. When we did the Brakhage initiative, I wasn't expecting.
That sounds like a Dan Brown novel.
It's part of the MCU,
or
written by Dan Brown.
Clive Cussler or something.
So yeah, the Brakhage initiative. I didn't think there was that many balls, but
here we are.
There is. Here we are.
Okay. Here we are. So next up on my disc watch on the DVD was Dog Star Man.
Next was your Dog Star Man.
Yes, yeah. It jumps around like basically all that's left on the first disc was Dog Star Man, and then Eyes, the autopsy shit.
Gotcha.
And then it goes back all around and goes through everything else. Okay. So Dog Star Man, RJ. So this is 5 parts. It takes place.
Yes, I'm aware.
It's 74 minutes long. And let's break it down. I'm going to read these to you, and you respond, okay?
Okay.
Dog Star Man, Prelude, 1962. A creation myth realized in light, patterns, images superimposed, rapid cutting, and silence. A black screen, then streaks of light, then an explosion of color and squiggles and happenstance. Next, images of small circles emerge, then of the sun. Images of our earth appear, woods, a part of a body, a nude woman perhaps giving birth. Imagery evokes movement across time.
Yeah?
Yep. That's
Dog Star, man.
That's Prelude. That's only the Prelude, my friend.
Oh, shit. Okay.
My notes, murky home video footage.
Yes. I say that somewhere else later.
Dog Star Man sounds like a superhero created by Grant Morrison. The short of film that comes out of a development tank. Oh yeah, that's supposed to be the sort of film that comes out of a development tank made with like a dandelion fixer or something. This is a deep cut reference for myself of people who are doing like experimental film out on like farmland, and they're like, hey, what could we use for developing tank footage? And it's like, oh yeah, use some dandelions, mix it all up, and use all natural chemicals. That's what this reminds me of, is real folksy filmmaking.
Folksy, eh?
Yeah, abstraction with only glimmers of a reference point. So yeah, this is the beginning of like departing, lifting off from Earth and into a whole new cosmo. Zooming out of tree branches with the sun ejaculating, RJ. We got those solar flares. You know it. You see it.
That's what it says?
No, this is me. This is me. Because it's about sex and death in life, RJ.
Shameful.
And yeah, Brakhage has seemingly at this point moved away from sound altogether and embraced the image.
The image of what?
Of what have you. Dog Star Man, Part 1. From a murky landscape, a wooded mountain emerges. We watch the sun. We see a bearded man climbing up the mountain through the snow. He carries an axe, and he's accompanied by a dog. His labors continue. There is no soundtrack. Images rush past. Water, trees, and surfaces too close up to distinguish. He struggles. A fire burns. Nature, in long shots and magnified, is formidable and silent. It's tough going. He carries on. In a capillary, blood flows. My notes consist of the journey continues. And then I wrote, whoa, Big Stan is going up the mountain, a.k.a. Jon Snow. Because he's looking a little bit like Jon Snow here. Bearded,
a little bit. He looks like Hodor now.
Yeah.
I mean, he's dead now, but you know.
I wrote, this shit I find fucking annoying. This.
Yes.
Yeah. And then I wrote, lactating nipples. And then there was also axe cam, where you see like the camera on the axe hilt as it swings away. You got any thoughts?
That kind of point of view is reserved for Marvel movies now. That's some high quality stuff, Jarrett. That's filmmaking, my friend.
You ready for Dog Star Man Part 2?
I mean, I'm ready for all Dog Star Man.
A man accompanied by a dog struggles through snow on a mountainside. We see film stock blister drawn square shapes appear. Then we see an infant's face. The images of struggling climber, baby, blurred film stock, large snowflakes, and what may be microscopic details of matter are superimposed on each other, one dominating the frame briefly to be replaced by another. As the man falls in the snow and tries to regain his feet, the baby continues to appear, first with eyes closed. Alternately, wow. Images rush by, montages of paper cutouts and life under a microscope. RJ, do these films reflect your experience living in Colorado?
It's pretty close.
Yeah.
When I lived there, I was climbing a lot of mountains. I was transmuting into a lot of babies.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
a primal scream for survival, the essence of life.
Yeah. There was a lot of dogs there, too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's pretty close.
Dog Star Man Part 3 from 1964. sexual intimacy. 3 kinds of images race past, superimpose on each other sometimes. 2 bodies, a man and a woman's, close up, nude, patches of skin, wisps of hair, glimpses of a face and genitalia, strips of celluloid with lines and squiggles scratched on them, and close-up shots of what appear to be the insides of living bodies, a heart beating, muscle and sinew and tissue wet with fluids, the exterior and interior of desire.
And then what happened?
Dog Star Man Part 4, 1964. The riveting conclusion.
Oh, man.
A man is supine on a mountainside. Images rush past of nature and a stained glass saint. An infant is born. We see a lactating nipple. Images include a mountain peak, farm buildings, a tree stump, a fire, a crawling baby, and the sun. The man falls and rolls. Then later, he swings his axe.
I'm glad that they emphasized that point.
Well, I wrote, that was exhausting. And then I realized I have 22 films to go.
Yeah, Dog Star Man hits early.
It's a good one to get out of the way quick.
It hits early. My only comment on Dog Star Man was a blank, just nothing.
Yeah. The title of this, Dog Star Man, it comes from a pulp western novel that Brakhage came across in his wanderings. He was like, it had a really nice like painted cover. He's like, oh, Dog Star Man, that sounds amazing. And then he
stole it.
And then he read the first few pages of it in the store, and its shittiness offended his sensibilities. What a waste of a great title. So he made this.
It's funny. I was thinking the same thing about Dog Star Man.
What a waste of a great title.
What a waste of a great title.
Brakhage also talks about the myth, like he's George Lucas.
Oh, is it poetry?
The power of myth. I'm sure it is poetry, as I mentioned earlier. Yeah. The poetics of abstract expressionism. This is a trial and a half, and this is the most celebrated of them all because I guess it's the most substantial because it's so long, and people go, there's some takes out there, folks. You can go out there, read them for yourselves of how amazing this is. How it just they were watching it and then it was over, and they're like, what happened? Not my experience. I was very much checking my social media, checking my emails, looking on Letterboxd, seeing what other people were watching.
This is one of those ones where it was kind of like quite on, where I wasn't even looking at social media. I just looked up into my roof, into my ceiling, and I was like, I wonder what's going on in my walls right now. Your mind drifts so much. You're just like, well, what's Wood thinking? That's where I was a Dog Man.
Yeah.
Dog Star Man.
The end of disc 1, we have The Act of Seeing with One's Own Eyes from 1971. So this is an abnormality in the Brakhage oeuvre. The synopsis: at a morgue, forensic pathologists conduct autopsies of the corpses assigned. A certain quote from The Simpsons comes to mind of, "Hey kid, want to see a dead body?"
Want to see a dead body?
That's Brakhage asking you, and you're like, yes or no. Well, you're here watching it. So this is about 30 minutes long.
I don't feel I was asked if I wanted to see a dead body or not.
And it does on the DVD. It explicitly warns you that
I didn't have the DVD.
This tells you
I wasn't warned.
This is the dead body party, and you get to spend time in a forensics lab, in a morgue, whatever it is, and you get to see dead bodies. And the process of just like seeing a dead body, many dead bodies of shapes, sizes, colors. You get to see different kinds of balls. And you get to see some dead balls that are very distended and weird. You also get a little bit of fingering of belly buttons again. Dead belly buttons.
It's his thing, I guess.
Autopsy footage, though, RJ. Have you ever seen autopsy footage before?
I have.
You've been on, like, do you remember Rotten.com? Was that before your time?
I am aware of Rotten. I never searched out autopsy footage. I saw it in a class once. I was shown it because I had to, because I was in the class that was doing it. I never went to rotten.com and searched up dead bodies, but I'm sure a lot of guys did.
Mm-hmm.
And I gotta say, Jarrett, I'm not a fan.
Not a fan of dead bodies?
I understand what he's trying to do. He says, hey, this is a part of life. People die. People get autopsies. What are you going to do? I'm Stan Brakhage. Yay. But, in my point of view, I don't like people filming dead bodies. It seems wrong. Like, this guy could have been like, yeah, sure, I don't give a shit. Film my body when I die. And Brakhage is like, okay, I'm going to do it then. But in my mind, I'm not for this thing. My comment was, Jesus Christ. Because I was watching it, I was like, I was like, what are they doing here? And then they start cutting his skull off, and I was like, oh God.
Okay. So a question for you. What's that dried up white thing by second dude's dick?
Don't ask questions that you can't handle, pal.
I don't know what that, it's like, I don't know what that was. So whatever you were or had done, at the end of the day, you're just another pile of meat on the meat cart going out of frame with a white sheet on top of you, if you're lucky. And some of these people, there's like a burnt up body that comes in. It's that's a thing. So it's like, why bother? After when you're watching this, you're like, my God, this is how it ends. You get inside out face. It's looking something like out of Elephant Man. Something out of that Scary Stories We Tell in the Dark.
Oh, is there actual dead bodies being autopsied in that hit movie from Guillermo del Toro?
No, not quite.
It could be.
Yeah, and then I'm here's that real autopsy fun. I think that was in reference to when they're just like taking because there's a bit where it's like there's like a slow easing you into like what happens in an autopsy, where you're like, oh, here's just dead bodies, and it's really like, ugh. And then they get to the autopsies and about what the state of a body is after an autopsy's been done, where organs have been removed and you're left as a husk, that you could be
Midsommar-esque.
Yeah, but not like, that's the thing. We talked about Midsommar.
Yeah, keep going.
We're good.
Keep talking about it. We're done.
We get to see like reminders of what human fat looks like on the inside. There's like the chunking through the rib cage. Just like can you imagine how sharp those scissors are? Those like just wrenching through to pop it all out.
Oh, hey, I've done things to bodies.
Okay.
So yeah, maybe I had PTSD watching this thing.
Yeah,
and
so
just
okay. My light brevity. You're talking about this. This is the pinnacle, I think, of Brackage's work. I think because it has that reference to reality.
Yeah,
and it's like it is. There's nothing quite like it. It talks about just what life is and the thing that no one wants to talk about, and it's like, does it change anything? Does anybody really want to go out and start talking about death and face their mortality? No, because we're afraid of death. We're like, no matter who says, no, I'm good with it, I'm cool. It's like, no one's okay with it, I don't think. It reminded me of like was it Blood of the Beasts, which is spending time in an abattoir and you're getting to see what happens to animal bodies with cow bodies, and that stuff, that shit's horrifying. And then when you're watching it humans, there's almost like I can relate to this in a different way, but I'm still alive. But then you see what a body looks like when it's been turned off, like when it's no longer functioning, and realize like that's it, that you get that spark of life. And so I mean, there is like a messed up argument that this should be like life inspiring, because it should lead one to maybe appreciate the life that they have while they're still kicking. I don't know.
I mean, there's that age-old thing where it's like, well, death makes life meaningful, but at the same time, maybe it all doesn't. Maybe none of it matters, Jarrett.
Well,
maybe we could just end it.
No. So I think that because I don't know, this feels just more like a straight up documentary and is kind of at odds with, because the editing is like, it's direct cinema. There's like some editing, and it's like compiled and condensed, but there's no trickery. There's no burnouts. There's no like awareness. At least I didn't really pick up on any, not like to the level that his other films have, that are like bring attention to like, hey, you're watching film. So yeah.
Yeah, I didn't like this because I don't like seeing dead bodies.
Yeah. No, I don't know if anyone does.
No, I mean, and I understand that's intentional.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'd rather watch Commando. Wouldn't you?
Muscles.
Yeah.
Okay. And then on to disc
What's up
2.
next?
Cat's Cradle, 1959.
Oh, yes.
Images
This
of
was, I think, I'm just going to interrupt you. I think this was the best and only good one of all of these.
Yeah. This one is actually of his like actual just the early ages of his stuff and the experiment. Yeah, that's actually my note. So images of 2 women, 2 men, and a gray cat form a montage of rapid bits of movement. A woman is in a bedroom. Another wears an apron. They work with their hands, occasionally looking up. A man enters a room. A woman smiles. He sits. Another man sits and smokes. The cat stretches. There are close-ups of each. The light is dim. A filter accentuates red. A bare foot stands on a satin sheet. A woman disrobes. She pets the cat. The Stan Brakhage summary of this is sexual witchcraft involving 2 couples and a medium cat. Yeah, my note was like, I found this to actually be a fairly attractive short. The reddish hues, the editing, the cat fur, looking at Kitty, and yeah, as early as Brakhage stuff goes, I think this is his best looking and most accomplished. Like, it really I actually liked watching this.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it just because there was a cat on screen and it wasn't being tortured, so I was like, I'm cool with this.
Bonus.
Yeah, Cat's Cradle's not bad.
No, that's a gooder. Window Water Baby Moving from 1959. On a winter's day, a woman stretches near a window, then sits in a bathtub of water. She's happy. Her lover is nearby. There are close-ups of her face, her pregnant belly, and his hands caressing her. She gives birth. We see the crowning of the baby's head, then the birth itself. We watch a pair of hands tie off and cut the umbilical cord. With the help of the attending hands, the mother expels the placenta. The infant, a baby girl, nurses. We return from time to the bath scene. By the end, Dad's excited. Mother and daughter rest.
You what?
So Brakhage,
Dad's excited.
Brakhage is to belly buttons as Tarantino is to feet.
I agree with you. Also, I don't need to see babies being born. I don't need to see bodies being taken apart.
You don't like death. You don't like birth. What? You got a problem?
I don't like life.
Yeah.
I don't like all 3 of those things: birth, life, and death.
Man,
none of them are good.
Brakhage is not for you, my friend.
I mean, none of it is.
I got a note here of Va Va Voom.
To the pregnant lady?
She's a pretty nice. She's a very attractive woman.
Which part? When the baby is crowning?
That was Brackage's wife. Okay. I think this is their daughter being born.
Okay.
Yeah.
How would you feel if you grew up and you're like, my birth was on...
Here it is.
People are watching it when they're doing podcasts.
You know what would make birth even more difficult? Having a camera up in your cooch.
I mean, it probably doesn't help.
Spread your legs wider. I'm trying to get a good shot. The light, not a good light, honey. Open it up. I can only imagine that shoot day. Good God.
Not good. So this is another thing. I've seen this several times, and I'm pretty much done seeing live birth.
Yeah. Hey, well, 1959. I mean, and was it presented this way? Yeah, I wrote explicit detail, of which there is some.
Yes, there is some.
I just like to thank everyone who's probably proud that I was objectifying the pregnant woman giving birth.
Yeah, I know. You're fitting right up there with the big dogs.
It's all in the name. Criterion Creeps.
I mean, we've never said that before.
Next up, Mothlight, 1963.
Mm-hmm.
Seemingly at random, the wings and other bits of moths and insects move rapidly across the screen. Most are brown or sepia. Up close, we can see patterns within wings, similar to the veins in a leaf. Sometimes, the images look like paper cutouts, like Matisse. Green objects occasionally appear. Most wings are translucent. The technique makes them appear to be stuck directly to the film. Materiality, RJ. It's about the surface and the illusion of surface.
Material. They may appear like they're not real moths. Come on.
So
Come on. Did you know that
point,
this is his most popular film on Letterboxd?
Yeah, I know. So at this point, I wanted to ask you, had you considered how experimental films were shown at the time of their release?
I think we've touched on that a little bit.
We talked about it earlier, but how was this projected? Was this ever on a TV screen? And now, 50 plus years later, we're watching this stuff. And I think culture has changed so irrevocably from the period of time that stuff like this was being made, that this is just this piffy little stuff that just isn't going to change anything. We're so deep into whatever you want to call peak post-capitalism, RJ, that shit like this is whatever. Thanks, moths, and moving along. What can you offer me? What can you bring to the table that we can bring into our next blockbuster, our next Last Temptation of Christ?
Maybe Stan Brakhage should have had the foresight that people would be consuming this in their homes 50 years after he made it.
Listen to me go here. I was asking, are our opinions our own? If people are products of their time, we can't be above and beyond that ourselves.
Is this you talking?
This is me talking. These are my notes. Watching Mothlight, because I was just thinking about how something like this is received now compared to how it was received in 1963, and we're prisoners of our own time, and we're going to probably sound like idiots talking about anything we talk about now 10 years from now, but even then we'll be prisoners of a different time, and we'll be able to jeer and laugh. It's like going back and reading Roger Ebert reviews of things, going, what a chud he was in 1969, thinking that way about a movie, and no
one will do that with us.
Well, yeah, that would require listening to a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
yeah, you have opinions.
Yeah, I got opinions, and this one's about death, RJ. It's about death.
Aren't they all, Jarrett?
This one,
death and life.
It's about corpses, but it's insect corpses.
But what else happened?
How about the Eve myth? I myth from 1969. All 12 seconds of it. And you know what my note here was? And when listening to the remarks, finding out that it took Stan Brakhage a year to make.
This is the kind of shit that makes people say that art isn't real, Jarrett.
Isn't it, though?
When you're like, this 2-minute short film with mostly black and then just bloop, it took over 3 years and $40 million to make. And you're just like, art isn't real. Maybe we shouldn't give this any time anymore. Maybe kids should learn math.
The Wold Shadow, 1972. A stand
trees.
Of birches. Sunlight brightens and dims, revealing more or less of the woods. A light grass is on the forest floor. Is there a shape in the shadows? Something green is out of focus. Something
green.
The light flashes and the screen goes dark from time to time. We look up close at the bark of trees. Is the god of the forest to be seen?
Is it?
It's just it's a wood scene with a glass pane, and he's playing with exposure and underexposure and focus. And then I had some posts here. I copy and pasted at this point some comments about Brackage's comments about the use of sound and how when you sync something, then you're sunk. He was referring to the banality of treating sound-image relations in mainstream film as elements to be unified through representational cause-effect synchronization. In a letter to Rona Page on the subject of music, he speaks of his intense dissatisfaction with conventional uses of music for mood and so-called realistic sounds as mere referendum to image in movies. So he studied with John Cage and Edgar Varese, at times with the idea of searching out a new relationship between image and sound, and of thus creating a new dimension for the soundtrack.
I don't like any of the stuff that he's saying.
And then he also continued, the more informed I became with aesthetics of sound, the less I began to feel any need for any audio accompaniment to the visuals I was making. The more silently oriented my creative philosophies have become, the more inspired by music have my photographic aesthetics and my actual editing orders become, both engendering a coming into being of the physiological relationship between seeing and hearing in the making of a work of art in film.
See, I don't like that because I feel like he's saying that you can't equate visual and auditory sensory like stimulation in the same sense, where he's like, well, the visual is what matters. This auditory doesn't matter.
Well, it comes from a modernist strain, though, of like kind of stripping things down. And that's like the whole thing was like, you eventually wind up with minimalism. So this is like part of that process. But again, when you're explaining this stuff in academic terms, it sounds what it sounds like.
Yeah. It sounds like it's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
I think he's being a little bit narrow in his outlook on these things.
Yeah, I mean,
I think he needs to open it up a little bit.
Come on, dude. Just put it on behind your band. Pick up an instrument.
Like, I mean, well, to be fair though, I guess I would have I prefer no audio to if he went with like a solitary tone, just like doo, like the whole time, because he could have very easily have done that.
The Garden of Earthly Delights from 1981. A collage of two-dimensional images of vegetation, each appearing only for a moment, sometimes as a single image, more often with other bits of stem, leaf, bud, or petal. Often, we see only the outline of objects against a black background. Black and green are occasionally joined by fragments of orange or of white and blue. The objects in the frame don't move, but they are quickly replaced by another collage, giving the feel of rapid motion. Each collage is crisp, its lines etched against the background of black and later of white. Whitman, anyone, or Harmonious Bosch? Oh, this person.
With who? Harmonious Bosch.
Wow, I know what Garden of Earthly Delights is. Although there is no soundtrack, the rapidity of changing images and colors suggests a riot. And this is just another piece like Mothlight. That's all I got to say about that. The Stars Are Beautiful from 1974. We move back and forth between scenes of a family at home and thoughts about the stars in creation. Children hold chickens while an adult clips their wings. We see a forest. A narrator talks about stars and light and eternity. A dog joins the hen and the family while the narrator explains the heavens. We see a bee up close. The narrator suggests metaphors for heavenly bodies. Scenes fade into a black screen or dim purple. Close-ups of family life may be blurry. The words about the heavens, such as "the stars are a flock of hummingbirds," contrast with images and sounds of real children. Aw, shit, RJ, we got some voiceover narration. Audio is back up in this biz.
I wish it wasn't.
This goes way too damn long.
Which one is this?
The one where he narrates it. It's like 20 minutes long.
No, wait, which one is it? What is this called?
The Stars Are Beautiful.
Is this the one that opens with them cutting off those chicken feathers?
Yeah, throughout.
I skipped this.
Oh,
I watched him starting to cut off chicken feathers, and I was like, fuck this. So I just fast forwarded it.
It's like getting a haircut.
Yep. Well, no. I mean, they have those. You shouldn't do that.
So they don't fly away.
I watched all of these, but this one, I saw this handling of this chicken, and I was like, no. I just fast forwarded through it, and I'm going to be completely honest with you. I'm telling you the truth.
Okay, that's fine.
Yep.
So you didn't complete it. There would always be the gap in the collection. There is a moment in this film. There's this one shot of it's an overhead shot of yellow leaves on a tree, it's a forest area, and I kind of weirdly teared up, and I don't know why.
What are you talking about, Jer?
I'm telling you, there's this shot of of a yellow forest, and I was just like weirdly moved by it. and like had nothing to do with the audio. It was just this like long kind of shot of this like forest. It just like really nailed this moment of nostalgia I have at looking at old photographs. And like the tone of it, just like it had this right saturation, and I was kind of like, oh, I really like that image a lot. And that's it. That's like my only takeaway. I was not into his philosophical pinings like at all.
Yeah.
Nothing he said was of any
value.
It was like dude, just I've met far too many guys like this in academia who like they think they're good, and people go, oh, that was really great, but I'm like, no, this no.
So your takeaway, will it be this yellow garden, or will it be Stan Brackage's dick?
His balls.
His balls.
Well, we haven't got to that. We got his ass.
Well, we've seen it. We've seen some balls.
Yeah, dead balls.
Yep.
Yeah. Kindering, 1987, refracted images, not unlike those in a funhouse mirror, display two children playing in a backyard, a boy and a girl. There's a dog, a swing, a picket fence, a big wheels trike. The grass is green and lush. A soundtrack mixes a chorus, swelling strings, and a child vocalizing. The effect is to idealize the image.
So this one reminded me, when I was watching it, and it was like home videos, it kind of reminded me of that Ethan Hawke movie Sinister, where it's like home videos and then it's all those people getting hung on the tree. Bagul. His name is Bagul.
Wow. My note here was about the big thick kids in the backyard because of the the distortion of it.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, he's filming them behind the bushes. It's like, I'm assuming they're his own children or grandkids at this point. Who knows?
You assume.
87. Yeah, they're probably his grandkids. They're pretty young. And then I Dreaming, 1988. At this point, it just kind of starts turning to listless bullshit, where you're like, oh, like there's the Dante Quartet from 1987, where my note was staring off into space.
Yep.
And then, okay, so there's like, I'm not even going to talk about these because they're just like, it's Brackish. Just
name them off.
Night Music. This is the one that I actually, like, it's 32 seconds long, and watch that one. It's like,
it's the only one you need.
It looks gorgeous. RageNet was like part of this trilogy, and it's like also super short. He mentions that, I think maybe this was the one. Yeah, this is where he mentions he was like getting a divorce, and this is about like making his rage. So this is like the Brood. This is this is his possession. This is his divorce film.
It's not as effective, I don't think.
Not quite. Yeah. So then we got Glaze of Cathexis.
Solar flares.
What? Because it's about his response toward Freud's toward a scientific psychology.
Shut up.
And then we have Delicacies of Molten Horror Synapse, which has an amazing title.
The best title of any Criterion movie we've ever covered. And it is such a shame that it is in the by Brakhage collection.
Yeah. And then we have Untitled for Marilyn from 1992. I'll read. The film is officially untitled, but is referred to by the dedication that appears in place of a title card. Wow. It is dedicated to Marilyn Brakhage, the filmmaker's wife. Out of all the 350 plus films that Stan Brakhage made, this was his personal favorite. This film tried to kill my TV.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, because this thing is such an intense, like, barrage of color so fast that it fucked up the megahertz or something in my HDMI and my 4K player and my TV. It started getting this rolling bar every 30 seconds, and when it ended, it just kicked right out. Like, it just shut down. And then I had to restart. So, beware. And then,
did you ever watch Much Music, Jarrett?
Yep.
Do you remember Ed the Sock?
Yep.
I remember there was an Ed the Sock when they were doing those Fromage things where they were making fun of music videos. And it was like Fromage 2000.
Yep.
I remember there was a Simple Plan video once where it was called like, I don't remember what the song was called, but it was Untitled. And then it was like, but the story of a girl. And then Ed the Sock was like, well, your thing's not untitled then, you dumb piece of shit. And he's like, this title is the story of a girl. So all I could think of was Untitled for Marilyn. I was like, well, it's not untitled, you dumb piece of shit. It's called For Marilyn.
No.
Am I getting mad?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, you shouldn't. You should never look at an art book because Oh man, Untitled.
Untitled.
City.
But then you say the actual title?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Black Ice, 1994. A lateral
Okay.
descent through the midnight blues and blacks of ice and the refracted colors from absorbed oils. This one, the one thing I did notice was this one actually really felt like it was sucking you in. Like, it felt like it was kind of doing something. But it's like, again, but this is like the point in time, the last few that we've been talking about. We didn't talk about from Ireland. These are like the pure like colors on film. And like, it's just like him doing the little paintings on these things that take him forever to do. And he's just making these things over and over and over again. There's guys like this. There's guys like who work in these series endlessly. And they kind of like, oh, I was thinking about this. So that's what the work's about. But it's like, you watch and you go, uh-huh. You look up Eric Metcalf, Robin Peck, these men you've never heard of, Eric Cameron, Nick Wade. These are the guys that like he fits into that world. And there's some people who love it, and the rest of us kind of even me. I look on from the outside and looking in and go, huh. Studying color in black and white. I have nothing to say about that. Stellar,
black.
not very stellar. Crack glass eulogy. Kind of falling back on old tricks there.
More like
Brack.
Cracked ass. Spoology.
Dark Tower. This one, it's got a promising title. There's this one short. It's called, I think it's like the Black Tower. And it's awesome. This is not Black Tower. This is just like, oh, it's got this black kind of monolithic form at the beginning. You're like, ooh, you could do some interesting things with that. And then he doesn't. This is like he's now getting close to like the end of his run. He's like now has cancer, which apparently he says he might have got from these chemicals and paints that he was using to work with on these paintings of his, which could just be some dramatic flair that artists say, where it's like, my art killed me. I'm making my art and dying because of it. Like there's a little bit of that because you're like, did it actually cause that, or are you just saying that? People,
I imagine he's just saying that.
Yeah. So that was commingled containers. I talked about earlier, where he thought he had broke his camera, and so he was going to bring it in for like to get it warranted, and maybe we'll shoot this film first and find out. And yeah, I believe this is the one where he said he wishes that this was his last film, that he had died because he thought it was a great note to go out on. And then the final film of this whole ordeal is Love Song from 2001, which is just a whole lot of what have you.
I think my comment was more stuff.
Yep.
It's just more of the same.
Yep. Absolutely.
It's all the same, Jarrett.
Exhausting. You want to talk about who hates, let's say Dog Star Man?
Yeah, hit me with some Dog Star Man.
All right. John Castro, half a star. I think I've tried to start up the Prelude once about every 6 months for the last 5.5 years, going in late night and early morning, happy and sad, sober and drunk. It's done absolutely nothing for me in any context, and I've bailed out every time until now. And I think it's time to acknowledge that time's just been a sunk cost. If there's ever another adaptation of Art School Confidential, this is exactly the kind of thing minor characters should be name-dropping.
I mean, yes. This is the person who didn't like La Dame du Bouillon. They're back.
They're back already.
John Castro. They're back.
We got movies. We got here Smash the TV. 1 star. The least amount of fun I have had in the Criterion Collection since René Clair. Boom.
Wow. What do you think about René Clair?
Not so good. Not so good as the track records revealed. From middling to Well,
here's the thing about Smash the TV.
Yeah.
They gave George Washington 5 stars. That movie about dog rape.
What? What an animal.
What an animal. I mean, they like Criterion movies. They gave How to Get Ahead in Advertising 5 stars. Favorite movies include Repo Man, Harold and Maude, The Devils. They only have 3 half-star reviews. One is Independence Day Resurgence from 2016.
Oh.
The other is The True Game of Death. Looks like Bruce Lee. And Apartment 1303 3D. And I don't know. He could be a fan of the show. He could be a friend of the show. We'll never know, I guess.
One day he might even listen to this.
One day he might even listen to this. We'll never know.
Let's jump over to the act of seeing with one's own eyes.
Why don't we jump over to that one then?
What do we got here? Delicate egg? Gog? G?
Delicate egg gog?
Yeah, something like that. Half a star in any case.
Isn't that your nickname in high school?
Well, we don't talk about that. Delicate
Okay.
G. Okay. This was absolute dog shit. Just watch a real autopsy and you might actually learn something.
Oof.
This is a cheap attempt at making something seem disturbing when it really shouldn't be. There's nothing artistic about this film either. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think this felt artistic in any way. I don't think he was going for that.
No, I don't think so either. But
No.
I mean, I can see why.
I don't know if he was going for disturbing. I think it's yeah, you know what? Peeling someone's face back over their head, not the most cool image. Kind of probably would be a little off. Well, I know that the other thing too, when I was listening to those Brakhage remarks, was him how difficult it was to shoot this. And he was like, I got to do this. I got to make it through. And he was like, oh my God, if they bring a fucking kid in here, I'm going to lose it. I will just collapse. And so you're like, yo, not good.
Well, and see, that's what I was saying. I understand what they're doing, but it's I still don't want to see it.
Yeah.
So this person has weird half-star reviews. So active scene with one's own eyes, Atlantis, the Disney movie, Eragon, Fist of the North Star, Narnia, Rock and Rolla, Secret Window, Incredible Hulk. They're all over the place with these half-star reviews, Jarrett.
All over the place.
All over the dang place. Dangle.
Tips from Chip, 1 star.
Ugh.
32 minutes of nothing but real human autopsies with ribs being cut off, organs being yanked out, brains being weighed, and nothing but slabs of meat on tables being left over. Unless this is on a list you are trying to complete, or unless you are a seriously sick individual, skip this one.
I mean, I'll take his word for it then.
Too bad.
Or their word for it.
No.
Tips from Chip. I mean, they like movies like Jarrett, like Treasure of Sierra Madre.
Yeah.
They have all of the regular shtick in there. Iron Giant, every Schoolhouse Rock, apparently. I don't know what that's about. And then they only have 2 half-star movies. One is called Hitler, a film from Germany, and the other is The Age of the Earth. What their issue is with those movies, we'll never know.
Damn.
We'll never know. They like Criterion, 7 Samurais in the favorites, Lawrence of Arabia, Princess Bride, the worst Criterion movie since By Brakhage, allegedly.
We did it. We did it, RJ. We nailed it. We did it. Oh,
Garrett, there's so many balls in these things. So many balls. I don't think we can express to people because you were yeah, we saw some balls here and then we saw some balls there.
Some belly buttons.
But unless you actually watch these things, you have no idea how many times you actually see balls. You'd have no idea.
Really makes you think.
Not really. It's like I said, the whole time watching this, I was just staring at my fucking ceiling and I was like, whoo.
After the break,
Yeah.
I'm performing an autopsy on RJ's soul.
More like balls.
His bally soul.
There you go. Hey, you acknowledge that there's a soul, so you are a Christian now. Good for you.
Oh no! Don't be claiming me.
Good for you. I'll baptize you later.
Oh,
Whatever.
Jesus. No.
Yeah, you see, you said, "Oh, Jesus, praise him."
Jesus.